My name is Elena Carter. I'm 30 years old and live in the vibrant city of Bristol, United Kingdom. I have always been the kind of person who believes in love and connection. I thought that when I met Dan in March of 2021, I had found someone who would reciprocate that belief. He was 43, charming, and mature. In those early days, he painted himself as an independent man who had recently returned from studying in Egypt, a convert to Islam, with an impressive array of possessions, including his own flat, a car, and the latest Apple products. He seemed like a grounded soul who had everything figured out, a partner who could enrich my life. Little did I know that this was all an illusion, a carefully curated image designed to seduce me into a trap. Dan and I got married Islamically within weeks, swept up in a whirlwind romance that felt magical. But soon, the charm began to fade, revealing a much darker reality that left me feeling trapped and exploited. I found myself footing the bill for every meal, every outing, and every vacation. It was as if my identity was being absorbed into his demands and needs. When I questioned him about why we could not go to his flat, he claimed it was because he had a male lodger. He insisted he needed that extra income just to visit his parents in Scotland, to be a dutiful son, he said. I wanted to believe that his intentions were genuine, but I began to feel the weight of deception pressing down on me. Soon, my life turned into a nightmare where I was paying rent, bills, and everything in between, all while he spun a web of excuses. He talked about financial difficulties, saying his employer was not fulfilling his payments on time and that the cost of living had increased dramatically. To appease my growing concerns, he would contribute a few pounds here and there, presenting them as significant gestures of love. I naively accepted this, and in a fit of supportive kindness, I gave him £400 to repair his car, thinking I was being the perfect wife. I even funded a holiday to my home country, the stunning Seychelles, where I hoped the tropical paradise would erase my problems and provide a fresh start to our relationship. For just a brief moment, I drowned in the lush greenery and golden sandy beaches. But when reality called me back home, it hit me like a brick wall. Just days after we returned to England, Dan dropped the most staggering bombshell. He had 2 other wives, one in Scotland and one in Egypt. The revelation left me feeling sick to my stomach. How could someone so charming and sweet lie so easily and so deeply? I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I was frozen in disbelief. I had never been against the idea of polygyny, but it had to be built on honesty and consent. I reached out to the other wife, a woman named Nadia, who contacted me 10 days after Dan's confession. She was 50 years old and filled with pain, revealing how Dan had used her and manipulated women throughout his life. Though I wanted to be skeptical, I could sense the truth lurking beneath her words. It turned out that Dan's dazzling lifestyle was built on the back of Nadia's hard work. She was a civil servant, paying for both of Dan's flats and covering all his bills. The car he drove was even hers, a purchase she had made that had seemingly become a part of his masquerade. I began to dig deeper, trying to piece together what had once felt like a fairy tale. I discovered that Nadia was, in fact, the lodger he had lied about. As I unraveled this tangled mess, I felt emotions swirling: anger, betrayal, despair. Each new revelation was more painful than the last. Despite the mountain of evidence piled against him, I continued to support him financially, convinced that our love could rewrite our fate. I wanted to believe that things could be different, that he could somehow redeem himself. I was still holding on, despite being a part of a life built on deception. I paid over £1,000 every month in rent and bills, while he offered nothing in return. My world was crumbling, and I found myself feeling increasingly detached. I reached a breaking point, feeling as if I was living in a surreal nightmare where I was the only one willing to invest in our partnership. In the depths of my hopelessness, I began to quietly analyze Dan's character. He was a man who triangulated women, never fully committing to one, always extracting what he could. I had convinced myself I was being supportive, but I realized I was merely a player in his game of manipulation. It was a moment of clarity, a breaking dawn amidst a shadowed existence. I struck a chord, formulating a plan to escape his grasp. I would tell him I planned to move back to the Seychelles, building a new life apart from him. I projected visions of a luxurious life, painting an ideal future where I was free and thriving. As I claimed my space and began to emotionally detach, I watched him shift. Suddenly, he was chasing me. He could not fathom losing his grip on someone who had become so essential to his distorted narrative. It became a game of manipulation and power. I had turned the tide against him. And it was not just me who surfed this wave. Nadia sensed the disturbance as well. Her anxiety heightened, and she began threatening self-harm if Dan left her completely. She became desperate, throwing more money at him to win him back, while he threw verbal daggers at her in conversation. I imagined he was saying similar things about me. Nadia eventually broke down, walking in on us one day at Dan's flat, a moment that fractured the illusion further. In her fragile state, she lashed out, calling me a whore to Dan's mother. But in that chaos, she simultaneously reached out to me, asking if I needed help to leave him. She was a shell of a person, a testament to what years of hoping and waiting for change could do. She gathered her belongings, stealing a few of his items in the process, which I knew she had purchased. But her pain resonated with me. Dan had taken so much from her for years that it was hard not to empathize. I remained firm with Dan after that incident, refusing to pay rent or bills. This was his flat. It was his responsibility now. I reminded him of his obligations as a husband, telling him that I would walk away if he could not meet those basic expectations. His face transformed into one of shock and panic. He had lost Nadia, his prized cash cow, the one who had supported him financially for so long. He was trapped in his deceptions and misread my intentions completely. He thought he could use me indefinitely while maneuvering around the truth with disingenuous charm. The power dynamics shifted dramatically. With every passing day, his desperation grew, and he tried to prove his worth in my eyes. He began to pay the bills, hoping to rectify the image he had raised. Little did he know, I had already moved on mentally and emotionally. I remained silent while he portrayed himself as the victim, stewing in my quiet strength. I didn't react. I simply stood my ground, secured in my newfound independence. Finally, when he was at his lowest, I orchestrated my departure. I packed my things, not looking back. I had reclaimed my power not through rage, but with clarity and emotional control. I realized that people-pleasing felt like love, yet often encouraged a form of self-abandonment. I had erred by believing my support was entirely for him when in truth, I had been afraid of rejection, fearful of unworthiness. The financial abuse he enacted upon me did not bear loudness. It hid in plain sight, and I could finally see it for what it was. I had learned a valuable lesson in the midst of my pain. I could reclaim my strength on my own terms without resorting to cruel revenge. Healing became my canvas, and I chose to live in full view of Dan, letting him witness the flourishing life I was building without him. I stepped into a new chapter, no longer tormenting myself over what I had lost, but appreciating what I had gained: clarity, independence, and a reinvigorated sense of self. As for Nadia, I hoped she too would find her way back to herself, to rediscover her worth outside of a love that broke her. I would carry the lessons of this dark period with me, and perhaps on a bright new day, I would find joy and healing together with her. After all, sometimes revenge does not look like rage. It is born of compassion for oneself and a fierce determination to rise above what others hoped would bind us. I wish I could go back and tell my past self to stop blaming myself, to stop apologizing for my love and softness. I hope no one else suffers the way I did, but if you do, rise above. Remember always, revenge can be healing, thriving in the wake of those who sought to diminish you.